to keep for both of you, both of you are 20 years ahead of your time, is to teach the younger people this stuff, which you are. But let's all get together, including old guys like me. Let's teach these kids, and I mean it, in this next year or two. Because if we don't, we're going to have entire lost generations. Glass is half full, from a glass half full standpoint that I always talk about, and I'll kind of turn it back to you, Tanner, on this, is Sheriff Mark Lamb and I talked. Val was there around my campfire, almost 2 summers ago. And we talked about the generations, and he wanted to be real clear on the younger generations. He's a Gen X, a little older than you, Tanner. But he had said, don't label millennials and Gen Zs or alphas. They're still young. But he had said, Tanner, that some of the best warriors in special operations were millennials. And I mean, a good chunk of them were, and actually pissed at other millennials for giving them a bad rap. But Val, you remember Sheriff talking about this. He had said, these are some of the best people in the world. Much, maybe news to some people is a lot of youngsters, millennials, Z's are the biggie here. And then the alphas, they're sponges to new information. They want to learn. I guarantee you, 2 alphas want to listen to their Gen X dad, Tanner. But the problem is they don't get this mentorship. They don't get obviously, in the mainstream media wants to tear apart men piece to piece, since they have since the 60s. Tanner, let me turn it over to you and talk a little bit about the younger generation, your responsibility thereof. But you've interacted with 2 alpha boys. Val, coincidentally, has 2 alpha generation girls. Let me turn that over to you, because the key, obviously, again, I'll stop blabbering. I tend to, but the key to me is the younger generation. Everybody I know, including my buddy, IT Wendy, in her human design, we're looking to the younger generation, and especially young men who are just flailing in the wind with no direction. I'll turn it over to you on that, Tanner. You're the guy as far as the trainer there of youngsters.
Well, all right. Yeah, there's a bit to unpack there. But I think if you look back historically, every older generation has felt like the younger generation just doesn't get it. If you look at the greatest generation, they thought the baby boomers didn't get it. Baby boomers thought that the Gen X didn't get it. So I think there's always going to be a bit of that. I think what I notice in the generational gap, and I work with a lot of different age ranges, and I always have. The culinary industry is an entry level industry. Anyone can get a job in the culinary industry. So you see a lot that comes in, but social media has changed a lot of in terms of exposure. I look at my 12-year-old son right now, and what he has access to, I would have never had access to. So I think we're growing our younger generation a bit faster than they need to. They're maturing a bit earlier than they need to. We're kind of robbing them of their youthfulness because of the exposure of things like social media. And I think the other thing that I'm noticing with my kids is definitely the attention span difference. I'll tell 2 fun stories here. One, so I had my tonsils out when, gosh, my oldest son, I think he was probably 4 or 5 at the time. And so after I had my tonsils out, I had an instance where I started bleeding, and I had to go to the we had to go to the emergency room, and and I'll never forget that the Grammys were on TV, and we're waiting in one of the rooms for the doctor to come in, and the Grammys are on, and the commercial comes on, and my 4 or 5 year old son at the time, he asked me, "Dad, what's this?" But put the show back on. He had never seen a commercial where, when we were growing up, I mean, you couldn't fast forward through the commercials. You that and that's the reality of him, 7 years ago. Um, the other thing that I really recognize now is with TikTok and Facebook Reels and Instagram Reels, the attention span is so much shorter. So it's instant gratification. It's one thing onto the next, onto the next, onto the next. And so it's harder for them to get the same joy out of things that we would have as we were younger. But I agree. The youth are hungry for mentorship, and I agree with Mark Lamb. I think it's wrong to put labels on things. I think it's divisive. I don't necessarily think it's wrong because labels serve a purpose. But I think it can be divisive to use broad brushstrokes. All millennials are lazy. All Gen Xers are rebels. All baby boomers are hippies. I don't think that's a fair. I don't think that's a fair assertion. But I will also say that we are approaching a very strange time, and that in the next 5 to 10 years, there will be more people over the age of 55 on the planet than there will be under the age of 55 on the planet. And that's going to create a strange shift also.